I'm Kevin, a rideshare driver. Welcome to my car. So I drive around in the Seattle metro area, focusing on Bellevue, Redmond, and Issaquah. And my story starts a couple years ago doing this job. Starts more like closer to 30 years ago, actually, in the Pacific Northwest as a software quality engineer and then engineering manager. And then a couple years ago, I got laid off from that job where I was working at Meta and started driving rideshare. And I thought I would just kind of start this vlog and talk about a little bit about my journey, where I'm going. This time, maybe not literally. I'm just driving around looking for rides right now, but kind of what it's like making that transition. As a 57, 58, I'm now 59 years old. As a technology professional who got tired of looking for another technology professional job and decided to use the car that was sitting in my garage and make a little bit of money, very little bit of money, as it turns out. But I have some time on my hands when I do this, when I'm out trolling for passengers, and I thought I would use it to sort of, just as a platform, creative outlet. My wife and I, a couple years ago, we also started creating YouTube videos for our travels, and we've got a few out there, a couple of them from for travel to Japan, Korea, and then also some more local stuff, some Oregon coast things. I think I have got a video for Vancouver, BC, and our most popular one, which has been posted, it is about Orcas Island, which is up in the San Juan Islands, up in the Salish Sea, part of the Puget Sound. And check that out. I'll link in the description for where you can get those. It's a different channel. It's actually a channel that we set up in order to practice this art form of video logging, and specifically for travel vlogging and that kind of thing. And we set it up with our dog as our dog's name. So it sort of turned into being just about our travels. We initially were going to have a channel that was about all of the dog-friendly things that we could find. And honestly, especially in the wintertime, what we found that there weren't that many dog-friendly things around. It was kind of surprising in the Seattle area. The breweries are great. A lot of the breweries are dog-friendly, so those are easy. There's all the parks and all the things you can do, and a few restaurants here and there, like Flat Stick Pub, for example. Dogs are allowed in there, which is kind of crazy because you got the little balls. Some dogs would probably love to chase because it's a mini golf course. Seems like mini golf courses and certain kinds of dogs might not be a good mix, but hey, it works for them. And it works for us too when we want to go and enjoy some time with the dog. So then we decided that we would have another channel that was going to be our main one, and we really haven't done anything with it yet. It is called Bridging the Pacific, and it's really about cultural differences and similarities, I suppose, between Japan and the United States. She's Japanese. I'm American. The secret's out. But she and we lived there for 6 or 7 years. Our daughter was born there, is currently living there, and that's why we do have the Japan content up on that other channel. And so the idea was that we were going to have kind of a, a little bit of a, I don't want to call it educational, because we don't know anything more than our own experiences. And so we had it set up so that we are going to set it up so that we will have conversations about our life as a cross-cultural couple, raising a daughter who's, bilingual to a certain extent. And now I've got a ride and I'm going to take it. Okay, where were we? So yeah, that's going to happen. Maybe if I'm recording, it'll happen more often. I'll make more money. Anyway, so what I was saying was that we had come up with this idea to have another channel called Bridging the Pacific, where we would talk about differences or similarities between Japan and the United States, or how we came about to come together and combine the cultures. And that's still the plan. We haven't made, I think we might have made a couple of videos for that. We haven't posted them yet, where I'm still working on them. Where again, what you try to do is you try to come up with these videos and come up with some kind of theme, or hey, it's working. So that's funny. I've been struggling all day to get rides. I've been sitting still and not really having much going on. And now that I start recording, of course, I start getting rides. So it's a problem. Like, I want the rides because I need the money, but I also wasn't going to find time to actually make a video. But anyway, first world problems. So we decided that we were going to create a site or a channel for Bridging the Pacific, and so I think we have a cooking video. We sat down, we talked a little bit about our origin story, a little bit where we met, how we, what things were like, 30 some odd years ago when we started this whole thing. And back in the 80s, and is it only 30 years? I think it's more. But anyway, so that's the beginning of the channel, and that's what we really want to get going. But I have also been following this fellow who, in his mid-40s, started a channel sort of helping or encouraging other folks who might be under the delusion that they're in middle age, or he's probably in his middle age. I'm definitely deluded if I think I'm middle-aged. Older folks with some experiences, with some backgrounds, some things maybe to share, and whether you want it or not, and putting it on video. And I thought, well, you know what? This has been a big life change for me, changing from office work, behind the desk, computer work, managing folks in a technology field, to getting in a car and driving around. And I've had a lot of really interesting conversations in this car with folks in the technology field, because in the Seattle metro area, especially Redmond and Bellevue, Kirkland and Issaquah, there are a lot of folks that are actually in technology. And I have to say, we've had a lot of conversations about AI, and they usually start with a chat about how Waymo or the other driverless car situations are going to be putting us out of work, and how that's going to work. And so that's that gets us talking about AI and robotics and how it's going to end up replacing, well, even Uber's own CEO has said that it's going to end up replacing 80% of the employees. And so the question is, what are those 80% are going to do? When robots are doing 80% of that work? So what are they going to do? Well, they're going to work harder, he says. All right, whatever. Work harder at what? Right? That wasn't a very good answer. We have a lot of questions that have to be answered around AI and robotics. And one of the questions that I have, that I've really been, sort of noodling on, is the timelines. Because everybody has this idea that it's going to be 10, 15, 20 years down the road when AI and robotics is able to replace everybody. I don't know where they get that timeline from, because the jumps that AI is making in the last year, let alone in the last 5 years, have been mind-boggling. And so there's no reason to believe that the AI bubble is really a bubble. It could be way worse actually than even people think, and we're not ready for it. But anyway, that's a topic for another time. This is just kind of an intro to what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. There's a lot of maybe I shouldn't say there's a lot, because I haven't found a lot of good YouTube driver channels out there. I mean, no, not YouTube. There's not a lot of good Uber, Lyft, rideshare driver channels out there. There used to be. A lot of the channels that I have found are years old, several years old, and folks have either gotten out of the whole rideshare driving thing completely, or just stopped making videos, because there's a good reason for that. I think YouTube, I said it again, Uber drivers and Lyft drivers have no incentive to help other Uber and Lyft drivers do well. This is a zero-sum game, and when I'm driving around in this area, we have a fixed number of people who are going to want rides, and we are all competing for that pie. And in Seattle especially, I guess Seattle specifically has a problem of an unlimited number of drivers just kind of flooding the market, getting out there. And I'm part of the problem, obviously, because a couple of years ago I decided to do this, and I just joined the masses of folks that are driving around. Now, many of those guys are young, and they could go out and probably find good paying jobs. And I'm an older guy. I have a specific skill set, and as an older person, when I go through the interview loops, I am invariably overqualified. Stupid word. I hate that. Overqualified. Okay, so whatever. Let me back up. I don't like using the word overqualified as it pertains to me, but I have used it as it pertains to other folks, because I have been a hiring manager. I have actually gone out and received resumes from folks and looked at those resumes for the job that I was trying to fill, and said, these people, they are not going to be happy doing this job. And I've made that determination on my own without discussing it with them, and round filed the resume, or I basically just sent it back and said, I don't think I'm going to move forward with this person, because they are on a management track and they're not going to be happy with being an individual contributor, which is what I was going to be asking them to do. So now I'm in that situation where I would be okay with an individual contributor job. It would pay probably significantly more than I'm doing this, but nobody's going to believe that. They're all going to just assume that as soon as I get my foot in the door, I'm going to be bucking for promotion and wanting to move my way up the ladder, whatever. Even though there's a lot to be said for the, not having the stress of being a manager, actually being able to clock off at 5 o'clock and go home. That there's a lot to be said for that. But at any rate, the market is flooded with drivers, getting back to the point. So the market is flooded with drivers. So this isn't going to be a YouTube video trying to help other rideshare drivers take my rides. It's not going to be one of those videos. But it might be, there might be some advice in here on rideshare passengers, and maybe perspective from a driver. And now I've been doing this a couple of years. I've got a few opinions on the subject, and would definitely want to hear opinions of others in the comments below about what they expect out of their rideshare drivers. And I can tell you what rideshare drivers expect out of their passengers, and a lot of it is just common courtesy. And I would think that as a occasional rideshare customer myself, that tracks. Just courtesy, read the room, that kind of stuff. Like, for example, if I get into a car and the driver says good morning or good afternoon, as the case may be, and asks how my day is going, and I say it's going good, and I ask how his day is going or her day is going, and they say it's going good, and then the conversation dies, let it die. That's fine. Just let it go. It'll be a quiet ride. A lot of people want that. I've come back from long flights, gotten in a Uber and said, you know what? I don't want to interact today. I'm just not going to people today. I'm just going to sit in the back of the car, and I'm going to look at my text messages or Zone, whatever. That's perfectly fine. And honestly, as a driver, I'm okay with that too. But if somebody wants to engage in a conversation, I'm ready. And, I also don't talk politics in the car, or religion, obviously. Try to stay away from anything too controversial, though, the conversations we have about technology, when people get passionate about those things, that can get a bit heated as well. Not heated, but you know what I mean. People have strong opinions. And just, roll with it. That's fine. Music selection. I choose the music in my car. I don't hand over the controls to the music to the riders. At the same time, I also try to come up with a musical mix that is, something that you might hear strolling through the aisles of your grocery store or something, some solid gold 70s, 80s, 90s, music, nothing too edgy. But also I have to listen to it all day. So it's not going to be anything that I don't particularly like. But what's your expectations when you get into a car? You're paying good money. Do you want them to give you control of the music? Fine. Somebody asked, I probably wouldn't say no. It just would be kind of inconvenient to actually give them access to my CarPlay or whatever. That might be difficult to do. There's ways around it. I could probably work it out. But nobody's asked in 2 years. Nobody's ever asked. Hardly anybody mentions anything about the music at all, actually. Other things. I'm just behind a school bus. This is around this time of day, which is about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. It's elementary school bus-ageddon. Every turn I make, I'm behind a school bus somewhere or in a school zone. I've already passed through 3 school zones since I started talking in this last segment. I help with luggage. Some drivers don't. Now here's a history lesson. Rideshare, when it first started, I remember this because I was one of the early adopters using the apps. The drivers, when you got in the car, you remember this? They would give you maybe a little bottle of water, ask you if you were comfortable, really kind of go out of their way to make sure that you were enjoying the trip. Some of them would even sing to you. Now, why were they doing that? Well, in the early days, the hope was that they would get a tip out of it. Not everybody knows this, but Uber drivers and Lyft drivers pay for everything. If you get a bottle of water from them, they have gone to Costco and got themselves a big, what would we call them? Big crate of water bottles, and they keep them handy to give out. Anything that you get from a driver is calculated to get a tip. If you don't tip, and so a lot of people don't tip, and the more you don't tip, the more drivers out there just get the idea that tipping isn't a thing, and if tipping isn't a thing, they're not going to go out of their way to get a tip. That's just the way tipping culture works. And so honestly, I do pretty well, I think, comparatively for tips, because the best way to get tips is just be a nice person. Just help with the luggage, engage in conversation, drive carefully, don't speed around, don't try to get them there as fast as possible. A lot of people don't want that. They would scare them. And just be pleasant. That's all. It's not hard. It's really not hard. I've had conversations with folks online about this. There's groups out there where rideshare drivers will get together and chat about these things. And I've had folks say, well, if I don't talk to my riders, I'll never get a tip. So no, that's not true. If you sit there sullenly and don't say anything, if you're just silent and they think there's something wrong or you're having a bad day, then yeah, you're not going to get a tip. It's not going to happen. So, but if you are giving them their space and it's obvious that you're giving them their space, I personally have tipped for that. I personally have given a tip to someone who clearly was just read the room and was giving me my space. So, cool. I have also tipped for a guy that probably should have been a stand-up comedian. He was so funny. He was hilarious, and he kept going one after the other. He had jokes, and they weren't forced, right? They weren't corny. Well, some of them were corny, but I'm okay with corny jokes too. But he was funny. He was entertaining, so I tipped. Tip. Bigger than a tip, though, not to say people don't like tips. It adds up. We get 100% of those tips. Bigger than the tip maybe is the rating. 5-star ratings, and a comment is even better. Why did you give that person a 5-star rating? Give them something to go on. A clean car, good conversationalist, good driver. Those kind of skillful driver. Those kinds of things. Those are good. We like to hear those. We like to read them in our reports, and I think Uber and Lyft likes, you know, I don't. It'd be really interesting to know if Uber and Lyft actually steered more rides to folks who got better comments. If they don't, they should. That would be one way of making sure that the best drivers got the most rides. Okay. I would do that if I were them. Anyway, that's the point of this channel. I feel like I've rambled on a lot for this. This is not the first time I've tried. I've had a couple of other attempts at this that I didn't like. Hopefully I'll like this one better. Not too much editing. I'll just go through and maybe cut out. I noticed that when I put the phone down to change phones, I left it running a little bit. So, you know, edit that stuff out, of course. I'll leave the coughs in. Leave the soda drinking. Not a soda, exactly, water. Don't drink soda. But you know, keeping it raw. There's another thing about this video making that folks have said is to try to make them authentic. Authentic is fine. I understand authentic. And off the top of your head is the only way I can think of to make it authentic. If you script it, it's not going to sound authentic. And then you can, you know, make it so that a really good piece of advice that I had heard, and I've heard this before because I've done some radio a long time ago, is make it sound like somebody you're talking to is right with you, and like at a coffee shop sitting across from you. In this case, sitting in the back seat. But great. Can't make eye contact right now because I got this weird mirror that is a camera, not really a mirror. But, you know, I can make eye contact with you. Sort of. You know what I mean? So it's that conversational tone, which obviously I have to get rid of the ums and ahs. That's just something that we have to consciously try to do, and I'm not that good at it yet. Obviously, this reading 20 minutes is going to be a long segment, so I'm going to edit this down. I'm going to cut a lot of stuff out. Hopefully, I didn't mess with the continuity too much. This is the third recording that I have today, and I don't know if I'm going to do it daily. We'll see how it goes. Hopefully I'll be too busy to do it daily. All right. So anyway, if you like this at all and find it useful, or have any topics that you'd like to hear your friendly local Uber driver talking about, let me know in the comments. Like and subscribe, hit the bell, do all those things. Or not, you know, this is just for me to practice my editing and my on-screen conversation. Might try to edit in some stock video of things that I have already taken for other things that I've talked about and throw them in here, so those will be there as well. Anyway, that's it. I'm out.